It started with a box, a plain brown package, no return address, sitting on the porch of the Holloway family's quiet suburban home in Massachusetts. The fall air was sharp that morning, the kind of cold that made the grass crunch. Caroline Holloway almost didn't notice it as she carried in groceries, but her daughter, Emily, did. Emily was 9, curious to the bone. She dragged the box inside before her mother could stop her. When they opened it, they found the doll. It was porcelain, about 2 feet tall, dressed in a faded Victorian-style dress. Its hair was brittle black, its cheeks too rosy, and its glassy eyes were a gray so pale they seemed cloudy. But what unsettled Caroline most wasn't the eyes. It was the smile. The doll's mouth curved in a way that wasn't sweet or innocent, but sly. A smirk, almost, like it knew something no one else did. Emily, of course, loved it instantly. "She's beautiful," Emily whispered, running her small hands over the doll's stiff dress. "I'll call her Clara." Caroline tried to laugh it off. Kids attach to weird things all the time. Still, the doll made her uneasy. Something about the way it seemed to be watching, even when she wasn't looking directly at it. That night, Emily insisted Clara sleep in her room. Caroline agreed, though uneasily, and kissed her daughter goodnight. Hours later, just after midnight, Caroline woke to a sound. It was faint, distant, but enough to tug her out of her uneasy dreams. A soft creak, then another, like footsteps on the wooden hallway floor. Her husband, Daniel, was snoring beside her. Caroline strained her ears. The house was silent again. She told herself it was nothing. Old houses made noises. Wind pushed against windows. Pipes groaned. She tried to sleep. But then, from down the hallway, came a whisper. At first, she thought it was Emily talking in her sleep, but the words were too low, too slow, almost like a hum, and woven into the sound was something else, something like a laugh. The next morning, Emily was bright-eyed, clutching Clara at the breakfast table. Caroline, pale from lack of sleep, forced a smile. "Did you sleep okay, honey?" she asked. Emily nodded. "Clara kept me company. She told me stories." Daniel chuckled. "Imaginary friend, it's fine, Caro." But Caroline's stomach tightened. Emily had never been the kind of child to talk about dolls or invisible friends. Later that day, when Caroline passed Emily's room, she stopped cold. The doll, Clara, it was sitting on the bed, propped neatly against the pillows. But Caroline could swear, no, she was certain, that the doll's smile was wider than it had been yesterday. That night, Caroline woke again, this time to a very distinct sound, Emily's giggle, muffled but clear, coming from down the hall. Caroline's chest tightened. Slowly, she pushed herself out of bed. The hallway was dark, the shadows thick. The door to Emily's room was cracked open just slightly. She could see a sliver of lamplight. She stepped closer. Through the gap, Caroline froze. Emily was sitting cross-legged on her bed. The doll was across from her, upright, facing her. And Emily was whispering, her face pale in the lamplight. Caroline held her breath. Then, in the stillness, the doll's head twitched, a tiny, sharp tilt to the left, like it was listening. Caroline stumbled back, slamming into the wall. The sound startled Emily, who looked toward the door. "Mom, why are you awake?" Caroline forced a smile, her voice shaky. "Go back to sleep, sweetheart. It's late." Emily hesitated. Then she laid down, pulling Clara close under the covers. Caroline backed away, heart pounding, but as she turned to leave, she heard it again. That whisper. Only this time, it wasn't Emily's voice. It was lower, rougher, like an adult speaking through cracked glass. And it was coming from Clara.
Caroline didn't sleep the rest of that night. She lay rigid in bed, staring at the ceiling while Daniel slept undisturbed beside her. Every time she shut her eyes, she swore she could hear faint murmurs, like Clara's porcelain mouth was pressed right up to her ear. By morning, Caroline was running on fumes, but Emily was brighter than ever. Too bright. At breakfast, Emily sat with Clara perched in her lap, stroking the doll's brittle hair like it was alive. "Clara says she likes our house," Emily said, between bites of cereal. "She wants to stay forever." Daniel grinned, sipping his coffee. "Then I guess she's part of the family." Caroline's spoon paused midair. "Emily, honey, Cara can't say anything. She's just a doll." Emily's eyes flicked up, glassy and unblinking. "You just don't listen hard enough, Mommy." Caroline's skin crawled. That afternoon, Caroline decided to test it. She waited until Emily was playing outside and slipped quietly into her daughter's room. Clara sat slumped against the pillow, hands folded neatly on her lap, that mocking smile frozen in place. Caroline leaned in close. "You are just porcelain," she whispered. "Just wood, glass, and fabric. That's all." For a moment, silence. Then the air seemed to shift, cold, sharp. Caroline felt the fine hairs on her arms rise. And in the stillness, a faint sound tickled her ear, like a rasping chuckle. She jerked back, her elbow knocking against the nightstand. The lamp flickered. Caroline fled the room, pulling the door shut behind her. That night, the house breathed differently. Every sound was sharper, every shadow heavier. Caroline tried to convince herself she was imagining things, but the noises wouldn't stop. Sometime after midnight, she woke again to the creak of tiny footsteps. She sat up, breath shallow, and listened. The steps were coming closer down the hallway. Closer. Then they stopped right outside her bedroom door. Caroline's throat tightened. The door handle rattled once, twice, then silence. She shook Daniel awake, frantic. "Someone's in the house," she hissed. Daniel groaned, half asleep. "It's just Emily." Caroline scrambled out of bed and yanked the door open. The hallway was empty. At the far end, Emily's door was shut. Too neatly shut.
The next morning, Caroline confronted Emily. "Did you leave your room last night?" Emily frowned. "No, Clara told me not to." Caroline blinked. "Told you not to? What?" Emily's voice dropped to a whisper. "Not to wake you. She said you're not ready yet." A chill ran down Caroline's spine. "Not ready for what?" Emily just smiled and stroked the doll's dress. That evening, Caroline suggested putting Clara in the attic. She forced a cheerful tone, saying Emily might sleep better with a softer toy. The reaction was instant. Emily's face contorted with rage, a flash Caroline had never seen before. "No!" she screamed. Her voice was shrill, raw. "Clara stays. If you touch her, she'll be mad." Daniel rushed into the room, startled. Emily was trembling, clutching Clara so tightly the doll's porcelain fingers dug into her arm. Caroline's stomach twisted. Something was wrong. Something was seriously wrong. Later that night, after Emily finally calmed, Caroline crept into her daughter's room again. She stood in the doorway, staring at the pale silhouette of the doll against the moonlight. The smile. It was wider. She was sure of it now. Caroline stepped closer. Her pulse thundered in her ears.
And then, as she leaned in, Clara's eyes shifted. Not much, just a flicker, just enough to lock directly onto Caroline's face. Caroline staggered back, hand clamped over her mouth to keep from screaming. From the bed, Emily stirred, half asleep. She mumbled into the darkness. "Clara says you should stop watching her, Mommy. She doesn't like it."
Caroline stopped talking to Daniel about the doll. Every time she brought it up, he laughed it off, or worse, gave her that tired, "you're overreacting" look. And maybe he was right. Maybe she was losing her grip. But deep down, she knew what she had seen. She knew Clara wasn't just porcelain. The trouble was, Emily believed it too. It started with small things. Caroline would find Emily's toys arranged in neat little rows across her floor. Trucks, stuffed animals, crayons, all positioned like an audience. And sitting at the center, always, was Clara. One afternoon, Caroline caught Emily whispering to them all, her back to the door. Her voice had a strange rhythm, almost like chanting. "Emily?" Caroline said softly. Her daughter whipped around, eyes wide. For a moment, her face looked older, sharper, like a mask that didn't fit. Then it was gone, just Emily again. "Clara taught me a game," she said. "Do you want to play, Mommy?" Caroline swallowed hard. "What kind of game?" Emily smiled. "Hide and seek. But if you lose, Clara gets to choose what happens next." That night, Caroline dreamed of footsteps, soft, quick ones circling her bed. She woke drenched in sweat to find her bedroom door wide open. Daniel insisted it was just Emily wandering in again, but when Caroline checked, Emily was fast asleep, with Clara clutched tight against her chest. Only Caroline noticed something new. The doll's porcelain hands were dirty, smudged with something dark, like soil. The next day, Daniel finally noticed something. Caroline was making coffee when she heard him curse from the living room. She rushed in to see him holding his arm. A long, thin scratch ran from his wrist to his elbow, fresh and bleeding. "What happened?" Caroline gasped. Daniel frowned. "Damn doll, I must have leaned on it when I sat down." Caroline's stomach flipped. "That scratch isn't from porcelain. Look at the length of it." Daniel waved her off, heading to the bathroom. "It's nothing. Don't start again, Caro." But Caroline stayed frozen, staring at the sofa where Clara sat propped against a cushion, smile fixed. The doll's fingers were stained red. That evening, Caroline tried something desperate. When Emily went to brush her teeth, Caroline snatched Clara off the bed. The doll was heavier than she remembered, solid in her arms. Its painted eyes seemed to glint in the dim light as she carried it down the hall. Her hands shook as she shoved the doll into the hall closet and slammed the door shut. She exhaled, heart racing. Then a giggle echoed down the hallway. Emily stood by her bedroom door, toothbrush hanging from her mouth. She spat into the sink and said calmly, "You shouldn't have done that. She doesn't like being put away." Caroline's throat tightened. "Emily, how did you?" But her daughter had already turned, walking back into her room without another word. Caroline didn't sleep that night. She lay awake, ears straining for any sound. At 2:13 a.m., she heard it, the closet door creaking open. She froze, every muscle locked. The soft thud, thud, thud of tiny footsteps crept down the hallway, stopped. Her bedroom door squealed open an inch. Caroline squeezed her eyes shut, her breath hitched. Through the sliver of light, she saw it, just for a second, a small porcelain hand curling around the edge of the door. Then a whisper, low and deliberate,
cutting through the silence. Your turn to hide.
Caroline didn't move. She lay rigid in the dark, her eyes shut tight as that whisper curled around her. Your turn to hide. And then silence. When she finally dared to open her eyes, the door was wide open, but no one was there. The next morning, she told Daniel everything: the closet, the footsteps, the whisper. He rubbed his temples, sighing. Caro, you're exhausted. You're scaring yourself. Dolls don't walk, and they sure as hell don't talk. Caroline's voice shook. Then explain the scratches. Explain how she keeps moving. Daniel's patience snapped. It's Emily. She's a kid. She's playing tricks. You're feeding into it. But even as he said it, his eyes flicked nervously toward the hallway, toward the bedroom where Clara waited. That night, the Holloway house groaned like it was alive. Caroline lay awake, pulse hammering. From Emily's room came the faint sound of humming, low, tuneless, not quite her daughter's voice. She shook Daniel's shoulder. Do you hear that? Reluctantly, he sat up, frowning. The humming grew louder. Together, they crept down the hall. Emily's door was open, light spilling out. Inside, Emily sat upright in bed, eyes closed, rocking gently back and forth. Clara was seated across from her, that smirk cutting across the lamplight. Daniel whispered, "Emily?" Her eyes snapped open, solid gray, lifeless, not her eyes. In a voice too deep, too wrong, Emily said, "She doesn't like being watched." The lamp exploded. The room plunged into darkness. Caroline screamed, yanking Emily into her arms. Daniel fumbled for the light switch, heart pounding. When the overhead light flickered back on, the doll was gone.
They tore the room apart. Under the bed, in the closet, behind the curtains. Clara wasn't anywhere. Daniel muttered, "She can't just vanish. Where the hell is she?" Then a sound rose through the house. Tap, 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 from the walls themselves. Caroline pressed a hand to the plaster. The tapping skittered away, like tiny fingers crawling through the bones of the house. Emily stirred in her arms, whispering, "She's playing. She likes it when Daddy's scared." Daniel's face drained of color. At 3 a.m., it escalated. The whole house shook with a slam that rattled every window. The bedroom doors along the hallway all slammed shut in unison, bang, bang, except for Emily's. Hers stayed wide open. Caroline clutched Emily, but Daniel finally snapped. He stormed into the hall yelling, "Enough! Whoever's doing this, stop!" His voice cracked, breaking the silence. From the far end of the hall came a laugh. High, sharp, porcelain. The attic door creaked open, slow and deliberate. A cold draft poured down the stairs. Daniel's rage faltered, his fists unclenched. He whispered, "Caro, did you see that?" Caroline's nails dug into his arm. "Don't go up there." But Daniel was already moving, as though pulled by something stronger than fear. He climbed the attic steps, each creak swallowed by the dark above. Caroline held Emily tight at the bottom of the stairs. The silence stretched, long and suffocating. Then came the sound of Daniel's scream, ragged, cut short. The attic door slammed shut, and from the other side, a whisper slipped through the cracks in the wood. "Your daddy doesn't want to play anymore." The attic door shook as Daniel screamed once more, then went silent. Caroline's legs buckled. She clutched Emily tighter, whispering, "Don't move, don't move." But her daughter only smiled. "She said Daddy's not fun," Emily murmured. "She wants to play with you now." Caroline's blood ran cold. "Emily, listen to me. That doll isn't real." A soft tap echoed down the stairs. Then another. Caroline's eyes widened as Clara descended, step by step, porcelain shoes clicking against the wood. Her face gleamed pale in the darkness, smile stretched wider than ever. Caroline stumbled back, dragging Emily with her. The doll stopped at the bottom of the stairs, tilting its head, glassy eyes locked onto her. And then it moved. Not a stumble, not a fall, a walk. Smooth, deliberate steps, like a person in a porcelain mask. Caroline's scream tore through the house as the doll's smile twitched, splitting into something impossibly wide. Its jaw cracked open, revealing rows of tiny teeth, too many teeth. The lights flickered, the walls shuddered. Emily laughed. "She chose you, Mommy." The doll lunged. When the neighbors found the Holloway house days later, it was empty. No Daniel, no Caroline, no Emily. Only the doll, sitting neatly in the rocking chair in the living room, its smile wider than ever. And if you stood close enough, leaned in just a little, you swore you could hear a whisper through its cracked porcelain teeth. Your turn to play. If you felt the chill of the doll that smiles at night, don't leave just yet. Hit that like button if Clara gave you goosebumps. Subscribe so you don't miss the next terrifying story. And drop a comment below. Would you keep a doll that smiles at night? Or would you burn it the second it arrived on your porch? Because in this house, the story never really ends.